So Diablo just dropped a new sort of official video about the end game. And I've been trying to follow the end game and what they're sort of expecting for the end game for the past couple weeks now, and we've put out a few videos and reaction videos to the information that we had, but some of it was a little bit dated. So this is actually going to be our first chance to really see the current plans for the end game, and this is probably going to be the most relevant information up to the live stream that's going to come out later on this month. So let's go ahead, let's get ready, let's hop into it, and let's see what we got.
We're really excited about getting this game into players' hands and letting them experience this massive world.
That water, so that water that looked like it was like a blood ocean or a blood river looked pretty good. I forgot how good Diablo 4 looks, because we've just been watching like old footage.
A main cornerstone of D4 is play your way. As a player continues to advance through the story and into the endgame, they'll unlock a ton of brand new activities that provide meaningful progression, no matter their playstyle.
Okay, let's see what these are. I'm curious. We've seen a couple different ones, like a tree and some PvP stuff, and the Nightmare Dungeons, which have like a sort of a key system, like Mythic Plus keys. So let's jump into it and let's see what they got for us.
To be able to keep progressing in the narrative of the game. Alongside that, the whole team has worked on crafting a variety of different experiences players can pursue.
We're going to have an entire world of Sanctuary for our players to offer.
I don't remember seeing those whirlwind blades on any of the characters up to this point that we got to play with in the beta. Now, I could be wrong, but those looked new to me. Let's watch that again. Like, I don't remember. Who is that? Is that a barb? I think that's maybe a barb, right?
Pursue. We're going to have an entire
That definitely looked like a barb.
world of Sanctuary for our players to offer. There's going to never be an absence of something to do.
After the player has finished the campaign,
That's a lofty sort of phrase. There's never going to be an absence of something to do. The question is going to be if the something to do is always meaningful. Do you know what I mean? Well, come on in, Johan. How you doing?
there's a lot more game to go and participate in. They gain access to a special, what we call Capstone Dungeon that they have to complete. Once they're able to finish this Capstone Dungeon, they're going to gain access to the first world tier.
As you complete the world tier, it will open up the opportunity for you to go into your next world tier. That involves unlocking powerful loot, new items, and more advantages for your player to have a better opportunity at end game.
Whether you're a fan of dungeons,
Yeah, we knew about the capstones and the way the capstones are going to be sort of like your hard stop or your hard limit to moving forward and progressing. I want to see them in practice, though. I imagine they're not going to be too challenging, but it's definitely going to be like a hard stop or sort of like a key that you have to overcome. So I'm excited to see it.
PvP, or just roaming around the world, there's a way to continue your Diablo adventure long after hitting max level.
So I don't want everything to like be shit you stumble into, because if I have to run all over the map to continuously do different things, that's going to be kind of like arduous over time. Like if I have to just run from zone to zone to zone to zone to zone over and over and over and over and over again, then you're like prolonging gameplay by just giving me busy work of travel, and that doesn't seem very fun, but let's see what they say about it. How you doing, Doc?
As your character continues to grow in power, you'll start with the skill tree and expand out into the Paragon system.
A lot of the choices the players make are grounded on skills themselves and the fantasies associated with those skills. The Paragon board is a place where we're allowed to have a lot more depth, a lot more customization, many more options.
Yeah, you can actually see. So if that is like the current finalized skill board, it looks like the rune words are taken out, maybe, but it definitely looks like you still have the option or for the glyphs, right? Because you see them in the bottom left, right? And I think the glyphs sort of empower the skills around them, right? Doing well, Duck. What are you doing today?
Options as you go.
You can rotate the board, so you can choose a different path if you're like, I want to do more strength-based things, right? I want these particular boons or glyphs. You can chart your path through it, and they're really a way for you to keep expanding your character and making it uniquely yours.
Similar to the Paragon boards is the Codex of Power. It's an in-game system that holds the aspects related to the character. You are able to complete a dungeon, and they will have a chance to drop an aspect that you can pick up.
So it sounds like they're not guaranteed, which to me is a big takeaway, because I thought completing a dungeon always gave you an aspect. So maybe like the lower tier aspects, because they're not really specifying, right? But maybe like the lower tier, like the rare legendary aspects, are like a guaranteed drop. But then as you start getting into the higher tier gear, maybe you have to farm for aspects. It could be wrong, but this is the first time I'm hearing like could in the sentence, and it's not like a guarantee. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments and what you've heard.
What this allows players to do is take items they're finding in the world and make them more powerful, turn them into legendary items.
It's really special to discover what kind of playstyle really means the most to you. Every part of Sanctuary is fulfilling and satisfying. Dungeons in particular are really close to my heart. Nightmare dungeons are going to give the players the opportunity to experience a dungeon that they might have already experienced in their past playthroughs. They'll enter the dungeon with a found sigil that alters the playstyle and the intensity of the dungeon.
They're more difficult and they have additional objectives, and then they also have affixes.
So it does sound a lot like Mythic Plus, except for the additional objectives. So we'll have to see how the additional objectives are. Maybe that's why the dungeons sort of felt like there wasn't anything in them and you were just kind of running through because you didn't have access to play them in sort of their full developed sense. You know, there might be like, go here, kill these people, get this, go here, kill these people, get this. And that makes it feel like less like you're running around in an empty void. But we need to see it the way it goes. This looks like a serious analytical breakdown. I would never do that, Toxic. We would never look at something and try to pull all the juicy goodness out of it.
Which add a degree of difficulty for you and your group to work through.
One of my favorite affixes that you can find in Nightmare Dungeons is actually called Hellgate. Occasionally, these portals will open up throughout the area that will just pour out different monsters that aren't native to that region for you to also be dealing with while you're trying to handle everything else inside the dungeon. There's over 120 dungeons to play through and find in Diablo 4, and any one of them can become a Nightmare Dungeon by finding a Nightmare Sigil.
So I like the idea that there's 120 dungeons. We know that they're not all unique, right? Like, from what we've seen in the beta, unless they just intentionally made them repetitious, they're not all going to be unique, right? So out of 120, there might be 30 or 40 unique dungeons. But the sigils do sound interesting, especially the Hellgate. That does look interesting. About to go get some food. I appreciate you, Toxic. I'm curious to see what all is in there because they haven't really released it all. We've only got like very minor snippets of basic information that they wanted to give us. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
And then using it to activate the nightmare version of that dungeon space.
Everything's a little darker, everything's more difficult. It's going to add a little bit of a twist of flavor on your particular dungeon.
And I also wonder if it's going to be random, like you can't farm specific sort of sigils, they just randomly drop. So that's going to mean you can't like go farm for specific sigils, or if they're going to give us a way to farm specific sigils, like you know that these 10 dungeon sigils all drop in this area or something like that. Because if certain dungeons drop certain weapons or certain loot, you'll need to be able to get those specific sigils, right?
There's some targeted activities in Diablo 4 that suit what you're feeling in the mood for.
The Forces of Hell are starting to have more influence in certain parts of Sanctuary in the vast interconnected overworld that we experience. And as the players are going into Helltide areas, they're going to find even more powerful monsters. And by killing them, they'll be able to gain these special shards they can take to go and use to purchase these big rewards that are available at these caches that are found literally throughout Helltide areas.
The sky darkens and the rivers run red, meteors fall from the sky.
Hey, I mean, if they want to make me president, I'd take it. You know what I mean? I'd take that.
And the monsters get harder. We really want to create new experiences for the players. There's one
I like the idea of the Helltides. I'm wondering if they're not going to feel sort of like public events from Destiny or something like that, where you know sort of which act has the Helltide in it. And then within that, there are like a couple different zones or areas that pop up on a timer, so you can kind of like time it out and rotate and run through those to try to farm gear, or at least farm the special Helltide shards to buy the gear. My biggest concern right now is how are they going to balance each specific zone to try to keep them all relevant, and not like the zone, but each specific in-game activity. Because my biggest fear is going to be that Helltides and, say, Nightmare Dungeons drop the same quality of loot, right? But say Helltides can be completed 30% faster. So then everybody's going to go do Helltides and nobody's going to mess with Nightmare Dungeons. On the flip side, say Nightmare Dungeons take twice as long, but the quality and caliber of loot you can get, plus uniques, eclipse the Helltides and some of the other stuff we're getting ready to find out about. In which case, then nobody will do those other in-game activities for like a long-term loot grind. So I like the idea of having multiple avenues, but I'm curious how they're going to balance it, because I feel like either it all has to be perfectly balanced, which is going to be an impossible task, or one will sort of emerge as a meta way to grind gear. The only real way I can see to sort of fix this would be only certain sort of activities drop certain types of gear, or there are specific pieces of gear that are sort of meta that will only drop from certain activities, which require you to try to grind all of them. But then at the end of the day, one will emerge to be the Paragon farm, which is the infinite farm that everybody's going to be doing. I imagine they're not going to be perfectly balanced.
Really like called Whispers of the Dead, which you get from the Tree of Whispers. The Tree of Whispers is grim and a little gruesome, but it's also something mystically haunting and kind of beautiful.
The tree has a little bit of a grudge against our players and it would like for them to go serve its needs. So you're going to go serve these bounties, gather different rewards, different items, and bring them back to the tree in hopes that it can exchange you something really meaningful.
Maybe you're going to go to the Fractured Peaks and take out some werewolves.
So this is a trailer. This is pretty much like a trailer for the end game for Destiny 4. They're kind of talking about, or not Destiny 4, Diablo 4, where they're talking about sort of their plans for the end game for the upcoming release of Diablo 4 here in June. So this is like end game information, and then they're going to follow this up with a live stream on the 20th of this month to talk about more systems, and those will probably be the last major pieces of information that we get as players up to the June release.
Wolves that are rampaging in a town. They're contained activities that you can do alone or in a group. We really wanted to create variety for people to be able to spend time where they wanted to in the world. It's very cool the way it's been put together, and I can't wait for people to see it, to be honest.
So the tree looked like it gave you almost a bounty cache, where it was just like a cache of boots or something like that. I'm curious to see how it works out. Now, it would make more sense if you, instead of running bounties, or pretty much exactly bounties, if you needed like materials, you could just run bounties for the tree to get materials, and then you would mainly focus your in-game grind right around the Nightmare Dungeons, the Helltide activities, and PvP, which is what Fields of Hatred are, right? They're the PvP zones.
In Diablo 4, we have a focus on the world of Sanctuary, and there are parts of that world that we call the Fields of Hatred, where Lilith's presence in Sanctuary has begun to seep through and manifest these poisonous areas throughout the world. When players go to these regions, they get to engage in player versus player conflict.
These offer opportunities for the player to collect shards, but there is a little bit of a catch. In order to get these shards back to town, you will need to purify them. Other players will definitely know that you're attempting to purify your shards, so you'd better be prepared to fight if you're going to be playing any PvP, and be prepared that you might lose some stuff in the meantime.
I'm actually really excited for the PvP part of this game. I want to see how it works out, how fun it is, and sort of what the reward structure is and reward systems are. I think that, especially if they're trying to gear it out in a way that like all sort of in-game activities are viable, I think that PvP should have some of the better cosmetics to try to draw more people into it. Because I think that if not, you're going to have PvP ran by just a couple, like major badasses. and it's going to de-incentivize everybody else from even attempting to do it, just because they're pretty much farming shards just to give them to the people that sort of like run the PvP. So I'm curious to see how this balances out and how it plays in game, because this is one of the aspects of the game that I think I'm most excited for pre-launch.
Once they've got the purified shards, they can take these, go back to nearby towns to sell them, and then use that to buy a whole bunch of like interesting cosmetic items and rewards.
It's a place for people who really love PvP and want to still get loot and still increase their character's power. If that's the way they want to play, they can.
Launch is just the beginning. One of the things we're really focused on is creating a living, breathing set of updates for players to engage with after the game has gone live.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of people have to keep in mind, right? Is that the launch of Diablo 4 is literally just the start of the game. And a lot of its other competitors out there have had years to really perfect and grow. So as long as these are good baseline systems that provide a decent experience for players, I call that a win, because they can expand on them through the season and through the year. I think that's something everybody needs to keep in mind. But the systems look decent, but I do have some concerns with a few of them, which we've kind of voiced throughout the video. I might do more of a deep dive on this, or I might just do more React content based around breakdowns and kind of go through it that way. I'm not entirely for sure. There's definitely a lot of positives in here. There are a few things that I'm concerned with, only because I can see how it could go poorly, and I just need to see it in practice. I don't really see anything here as a negative. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with the breakdown.
It's really just going to be a way to keep coming back and experiencing more Diablo 4 in fresh ways.
We're really eager to hear all of your experiences and just enjoy the entire story with you all.
But it does look good. But ultimately, it's going to depend on what you guys think too, right? It's not only my opinion, it's your opinion. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of the endgame? What do you guys think of the endgame content? This wasn't anything particularly new. This actually kind of mirrored everything that we had in a previous sort of Diablo 4 endgame breakdown. But it was nice to hear it specifically from the Diablo team. There were a few sort of tweaks to some of the stuff they said. But I'm definitely excited. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And as always, have a great day.